Good morning, everyone. Brief introduction. I'm Kingston Trinder from Atelier Éditions. We have here Thomas Sauvin and Erik Kessels, two wonderful artists, brilliant men, Renaissance men even. I thought I'd hand over to you first and let you both introduce yourselves, your work, and so forth, and just give a sense to the, to viewers and readers and admirers and potential, I don't know, partners, lovers, who you are and what you do and where you are and why you are, perhaps. Perhaps starting with you, Erik, Thomas, whomever.
Erik?
Yeah, my name is Erik Kessels. I'm a designer and artist from living in Amsterdam and working from Amsterdam. And yeah, I think like I can also maybe speak for Thomas. Both Thomas and I, we share kind of the same passion of working with archive of images and with like vernacular images. Both of us have for quite a while interest of looking at these and playing with them and also kind of reappropriating images in such a way that taking them from its original context and putting it into a new one, and for that giving these images also a second life and making a certain story out of it. I think it also comes from this whole thing that I think at a certain moment, because we live in a kind of a renaissance of imagery, I think at a certain moment, all the image possibly that could be made are already made or will be made, because you see nowadays a lot of these kind of algorithms and a lot of memes that kind of produce almost similar imagery. And I think in our case or in our practice, what we also like to do is talk about and point out the stories that might be within sometimes a very mundane image and bringing that back to life again.
Thomas, would you like to add to that in terms of yourself and practice and so forth?
What could I add? We obviously share the same passion for images as Erik said, and one could add that Erik's collection built in the West, while my collection historically built in the East. I was based in China, in Beijing, for about 12 years of time. I keep on claiming on my website that I'm based between Paris and Beijing, but I should probably edit that at some point since I'm not allowed to go to China anymore for the last 12 months. And Erik and I first met in New York, actually, at the New York Art Book Fair in 2008, where I saw a conference of his sharing his thought about collecting photographs and actually using them. It was a very inspiring talk for me. At that time, I was working for the Archive of Modern Conflict, so both Erik and the Archive of Modern Conflict influence was very important to me. And it's only a few years later that Erik, you actually came to Beijing. Was it in 2013 or something like this? And that's when we decided to work on a tiny yet quite nice publication together that's called Me TV, and which was a very practical book because it only contained 8 pictures.
Well, speaking of that, perhaps what sort of opportunity to segue now is to the genesis of Talk Soon. So how, when, what, why, how did this come about? Like, we obviously know the context of the spring of 2020, the pandemic had begun, quarantine had struck. What was the sort of genesis? Can you sort of talk to that a bit, sort of how it came about and why and so on?
Yeah, I think a lot of people that work with images and work in art or in design or whatever, they will recognize this because, this moment in time last year when the pandemic started and lockdown started, we are kind of people that really like to make things and to collaborate with other people, to meet on festivals. That's where things come, and that's where things are cooking. And yeah, we in a way we have also a little bit of an addiction for that, because yeah, like with a large group of people, normally you mail each other with each other's interests. So there is a large group of also people, yeah, like that Thomas knows, and that we gather around us over the years that have a similar kind of interest and work in a similar field, and we often collaborate together. And yeah, suddenly this was all gone, and yeah, like and it becomes also a bit. Became also a bit depressing, not like to really make things, because yeah, we really want to play with things and make things and work with these images. So yeah, like I dropped Thomas a mail, like I think with very few words, but I just asked like maybe we should ping pong together, and but then with images instead of a ball. And that was about it. I sent the first image to him and asked him to react on it from his side. And yeah, that resulted in like several weeks or a few months of kind of backwards and forwards without any words. Like really, we answered and we spoke with the image that we sent to each other. And there was no plan to make a publication of that whatsoever, but more, like also because when somebody, like I did this with Thomas, but then, like, but it's also very exciting that once you get an image back, it fuels you also with certain joy, and also, yeah, with the curiosity in yourself, what kind of response you will have on it again. So the idea was that it was almost like a chain of images which responded to each other. And yeah, for it's not that we did that for the whole day. It was just like a few moments in the day that we probably thought about that, because sometimes the response lasted, was like within a day or 2 days, but mostly it was within the next 10 minutes that we responded to an image with each other.
Yeah, you're right when you say that when we started that, actually there was no plan to do an exhibition or a book or whatsoever. And actually, as I was checking my emails earlier today, I saw that this is something we somehow started a few years before. You sent me a photo of was it a baby next to a meat grinder or something, and I started responding to it with a photo. But then at that time, because we were busy enough with what we had to do, books and exhibition and all, then maybe it didn't lead to anything. But because of the specific time of the quarantine, actually, when you sent me that mail on March the 21st, and I found a mail which was pretty minimal, you said, "I'm getting bored out of my head. Must be the same for you. Maybe nice in this boring time to start an estafette with images together. I send you an image and you react on it with an image, no words. In this way, we could maybe do something at the end with this image conversation between us." I start with the first image below. So there was somehow hope that we could that it would lead to something, but there was no specific plan except to do a ping pong of image without words. So it's a game you initiated, and it's a game you initiated with one photo, which actually is a photo of dismantled car. So if we look at the book, that's the first picture Erik sent to me. And I believe it's actually quite important that it started with this picture, because one can say that it's not a very pleasant picture. It doesn't seek the usual aesthetics we can be looking for. And that meant that there was, that settled the ground for a certain lightness or a certain scope of images we could actually include in that game. And the first image to start with is, of course, of course, very important. I remember actually doing this with other collectors in the past, doing the same game. I send you a photo from my collection, you send me a photo from your collection. And it turned out to be a complete disaster after 6 or 8 photos, because it was some sort of a game where people try to show off and say, you have this photo, but I have a similar photo, but which is in better condition, or maybe I have more background information, and that's something we didn't do with Erik. We always managed to jump from a topic to another, and it stayed pretty light and pretty flawless in that way.
Well,
I think it's also important to, you know, this. I was thinking about that also. I mean, for instance, in the last few days, I was thinking about that, like because I mean, it's very important that we started this off not by saying like, okay, let's make a project together or do a book together or an exhibition, or because, you know, like if that is the starting point, it will actually never happen. You know, like it's also good that things really kind of start from a certain emotion. You know, that first picture I sent had also to do because it was a broken car, because it was falling apart, and I mean, that was also a little bit the time and how I felt at that time. And but I mean, it's not like my picture, but it's quite nice to kind of communicate with that, and in that way, yeah, there was no pretension in that sense, and I think that's also. I mean, often nowadays, you know, like because everything is, of course, visible, and you can, you know, like a lot of young people also think like, how can I ever have an exhibition, or how can I ever make a book, or, you know, and in a way, when you kind of start and make things and have ideas and grow from that, things will eventually happen. You know, it's not like that. You can't start from the top saying like this is what I want, because it will never happen.
Well, it sort of adds to a kind of a sort of a thought that sort of dovetails those two things. As one, of course, you know, there's a long-standing history of collaborative relationships, right? I've written things like Gilbert and George, Catalan and Ferrari, Christo and Jean-Claude, now deceased Brunberg and Channerin. My sort of thought, question of some sorts was, in sort of synthesizing these two oeuvres, you know, these two bodies of images, one from the East, one from the West, both sort of very personal images, but also this idea that you're creating not with an audience in mind, very spontaneous, very sort of unobserved in a way, right? Two friends exchanging pictures. I wanted to hear your thoughts around the third entity that sort of eventuated, which is Talk Soon, right? Had you ever foreseen, and did it ever kind of correlate to your imagination as to what that could be, or maybe even should be? And then B, to talk something around the idea of image resonance individually and how those responded to each other collectively. That is, what drew you to the images that you responded with, and what was the resonance that came from entwining these two bodies of work, these two images, as it were, to create this third entity?
Well, it's a very simple question, so I will answer it very simply.
Good.
No, joke aside, I think what was interesting in this process, and Erik mentioned that before, is that when you think about it, Erik has been building his collection for a certain amount of decades. I've been building mine for about 15 years, and it's all very anonymous, very intimate, very personal images that the most of the time we're the only one to know, we're the only one to have in mind. Maybe the person who actually pressed the button, if this person is still alive, has some sort of memory of that photo, but we're the only one to actually possess the knowledge of the existence of those photos. And we spend so much time looking at them, observing them, and actually having them in mind that we could actually use them in a visual conversation. And a visual conversation, it's a bit abstract, it's a bit easy to say it that way. But when you think about it, we only have those images that we know. And Erik will send me one, which was probably shot in a garage in the, in the north of the Netherlands. And for many reasons, it will trigger something and immediately make me think of a batch of negatives I collected in Beijing in 2010. And then we could find some sort of resonance, some sort of redundancy in the images, in the way they were captured and everything. But then, of course, there was this ping pong. I would receive a photo, I had to send one back. So the similitude and the resonance would be something that we would explore. But sometimes if you only do that, then you get locked in that game.
Yes.
You need to find ways to actually escape the proposition of the other and to take different routes. And that's what's nice about this book. That's what's nice about this sequence of 120 photos. It's sometimes the links are very obvious. We have like very matching diptychs, and sometimes you need to really look at the two photos to understand why the fuck we actually put them together.
But that was actually also, I think, one of the most exciting things about this, also what Thomas talked about, was that because it was not that, for instance, Thomas would send an image and I would go to my archive of images and to my storage and go through things to kind of find the response. But it was bizarre, like how, because of course I have also a lot of images in my computer or on disks or whatever. And it was bizarre, like how, because I was responding to his image with an image that I knew was there, you know, like I knew the image, I only had to find it. So, but I knew the response already. And it was frightening to see like how many anonymous pictures you actually have like locked in your head, and how many you have, you know, in a reservoir somewhere in memory. And then because that was also sometimes when Thomas sent his picture again, I couldn't stop laughing for 10 minutes, you know, because I was so, it was such a brilliant response. And then yeah, I had to top that or go lower or go higher or go, and that was I think the very nice about the game. And also yeah, like maybe you can show some more pages, Thomas.
Yeah.
It was nice in how it followed up each other.
Yeah, maybe I can show a few pages, but I just put one that's in the middle aside, and to say that sometimes the connections are indeed very obvious, and sometimes it started being hard to understand, and those are very nice as well. I remember the one that took me the most of time to understand why you actually sent me this picture is that first was this. So obviously a very nice photo of a man standing next to a metallic sticks of some kind. Then it reminded me of this propaganda photo of this great invention of Red Guards who managed to have like big satellites where you can put a casserole and boil water. Eventually, the invention didn't go through, and your reply to that was this this photo. And I was like, but I'm not sure to understand whether is this because of the heat or something. And it's only after a few minutes that I understood that it was connected to the light. So of course, I'm not the brightest, and maybe it was it could have been immediately obvious to others. But it's also nice when those things are not so obvious. And so the way it started, and of course you see also when you go through the book that we're probably better at this game at the end than we were at the beginning.
Right.
So that's also something that's nice. So of course, to explain how the book works is always, we didn't create diptychs. we create a series of 120 photos. So this this is the answer to the previous photo, and then my photo sent to Erik, his reply.
You're absolutely right, Thomas. As the book evolves, you see that the back and forth, the responses become increasingly more abstract, and yet there's still a thread of continuity. And perhaps it's because, you know, as the images have passed forth, you get a sense that you two have developed a sort of deeper, more implicit resonance with one another on I guess, on a more abstract level, perhaps. It comes out in the image exchange.
Indeed. This one I really liked. When I sent you like this photo, which was basically a maquette made for an archaeological survey. So a full page, page number 7, and you replied with like, it seems like the stones was imprinted in. I wondered actually if this was your son or not.
Yeah, it's my son. It's one of the few pictures that I took myself in there. But I mean, that doesn't matter. You know, that's also nice when, I mean, I have quite some books with more vernacular images, but then there's some of the images I made myself, but nobody will ever know which ones I made myself.
Sure,
So
right.
they are, because they became vernacular as well in that sense. So so that's but it's nice to mix that. But yeah, like I took yeah, thousands and thousands of Polaroids when the material was still going, but then a lot of my kids and stuff like that. So
well, it's definitely a good opportunity to ask a sort of two-part question. One is around this. I recently came across this brilliant, or beautiful concept, this notion of hauntology, a sort of Jacques Derrida, French philosopher's idea that there is in the return, there are persistence of elements of the past always within the present. And so the thought behind that is, well, the sort of the haunting of the present by the past and even into the future is essentially the idea. And one of the interesting things that sort of comes up in looking at the talks and imagery, and I guess a lot of your own, you know, respective works, is there does seem to be a sort of haunting in the present from the past, a spectre of the past that's forever present, both in the present and potentially into the future. And the question is sort of around the idea that, are you within these pictures looking to re-enliven those that are obviously past, those that are no longer with us? Or is there a sense of reviving? Is there a sense of bringing life to death, in a sense, in using the images of those who are no longer with us, but also using images of those who are no longer with us?
yeah, I think, I mean, I think for both of us, the fact that there's an image which is very old or very much in the past or very like vintage or whatever, I think for both of us that doesn't matter, you know, like because what matters is that every image is captured at a certain time, and these images, maybe not all of them, but most of them are, yeah, like quite to many people quite unimportant images. You know, they are like forgotten. They are like these are like the orphanage. How you call that? Like
Yeah,
they are like
they're all
orphanages in time. You know, like
yes.
but what is very interesting is that, or you know, I think that's also in both of our kind of instinct almost. It's not something that we like to present to other people, or but it's more in our instinct that we find such images like there's a lot of joy and importance for, you know, like yeah, I can enjoy like enormously a picture of a chicken fillet, you know, like done by a cheap supermarket, and for many times, you know, or I had also this chicken fillet on a blue background, you know, like a horrible piece of naked flesh, you know, on a blue background. I had it like printed very big and hanging above my sofa for quite a long time, maybe 2 by 1 meter. And people said like, what the fuck is this image doing there? And But I mean, the fact that you kind of have an unimportant image and make it,
Yes.
and you know, and suddenly people start to like this image, you know, like because it's became something, and I think that's also, I mean, the fact that nobody has made an image for nothing, you know, there's always a certain intention in there, and that is also sometimes, of course, with more kind of artistic photographers or autonomous photographers or reportage photographers, there's always a certain I mean, it's never a total documentary image or a total reportage image. There's always a sense of manipulation in there, how you take it, how the light is, how, you know, or it should be like a total, like a pocket image or a mistake image. But otherwise, it's every image is made for a certain, with a certain intention.
Yes, there's intentionality implicit, right, in the practice. Of course there is,
Yeah.
which is rather interesting. I think it sort of adds to the sort of next kind of question around the idea of, you know, and this is perhaps my perspective, but that there did seem to be, you know, several recurring themes within Talk Soon. Like you've got pictures of banquets, of gatherings, of moments of intimacy, of, you know, memories, of commemorations, of, you know, normal everyday experiences essentially. And I wondered whether at some level Talk Soon was a way to was a substitution for all the experiences, pedestrian experience of everyday experiences or moments of importance that we were no longer having because of the quarantine. You know, is there an unconscious substitution happening here? Or was that more sort of abstract, do you think?
I personally didn't live the experience that way. It didn't replace a good party
reality
with friends and getting trashed. But no, I would say indeed there is no specific theme in the book, and the nature of the exercise made us navigate from very universal themes to unexpected encounters between images, so we can be like food and childhood and suicide and nature, and that's what's nice with it. I would say that something that comes back quite often in the book is the element of humor, and that's probably something that's very present in vernacular photography, in everyday photography. That's because people want to remember happy moments in general. And that's something both Erik and I are very responsive to. And that's something that without having the intention to make people laugh for the sake of it, it's very hard to deal with found photography and to avoid this element of humor and of lightness that you sometimes can't find that easily in the works of photographers, of artists with an intention. Then easily it explores way darker and more complicated and more conceptual themes, while the power of vernacular photography is also to actually record happier moments. And then to link it back to what you said before, I believe that actually this element of humor in everyday photography is something we cherish, we both cherish, and also we're not obsessed with the past. We're not like fetishist of analog photography. We like objects, we like prints, we like physical things indeed, but we're not like anthropologists and archaeologists of this kind of material. And what matters is not always really why did it happen in the past. Let's gather more information about the context and so on. The game is more to try and actually project it in the future. We're always dealing with neglected material. Stop me if I'm wrong, Erik, but I don't think you often buy things in auctions where you are officially being told that this is a priceless a piece of history in the form of negatives or in prints, and that you should collect it for the humanity to remember forever. Every time we collect something, or almost every time we collect something, something that's very important is that this object, the photos, were on the threshold of disappearing. It was just like, and of course, there's this position where we salvage the material, and then it gives us some kind of freedom to actually give it a second life, or actually give it a fourth or fifth life, because sometimes these images had many lives before us. And it's more about the future than what it was in the past. So Talk Soon is really sum up this approach that we have. We both speak the same language. We both built a collection that we're the only one to know and understand. And if images are words, then only the two of us could have had this discussion.
This is
Yeah, I think it's also, I think also the experience, I think for both of us, but at least when I speak for myself, the experience later also when you go through the books, it's almost like a train that got derailed, you know, like it's a train that's going, you know, very fast. And then because you go from one image to the other, but there's totally, I mean, it goes all kinds of directions, and that is something quite nice. Also, I think, because at a certain moment we also were thinking like, yeah, where does this end, you know, like because we thought like maybe it should end with the beginning, or but at the moment, yeah, you know, after 120 images it just got stopped. But we also stopped at the image of a ping pong game, you know, like which is, yeah, that is in a way also where we started. So and it was not the intention, but when suddenly in this, you know, like derailed train, the ping pong game came past, we said like, okay, maybe this is a good moment to stop.
So that kind of leads me to well, two thoughts. One is there is obviously a really fascinating dynamic with the idea that with vernacular photography, it's part of the sort of recontextualizing and the sort of in bringing an image, a source material that wasn't necessarily authored by either of you, into a new context, and in some ways working with the image to create a whole new experience or a whole new kind of context. The image takes on a new meaning, a new form of representation, a new dialogue with the viewer, you know, and with the audience, sorry. But it sort of takes me to this thought, and it kind of came out of something Thomas' partner had observed, was the notion of surrealism. And so, of course, we're all very familiar with André Breton, but he observed that surrealist imagery in text often arises from fortuitous juxtapositions between text or images which produce beautiful and nonsensical associations within the mind. And so my question is, were your photographs, the selected photographs of Talk Soon, intentionally surreal by nature, or were they just sort of naturally pedestrian, and there's a sort of surrealism and pedestrianism? And in these sort of, were the juxtapositions intentionally idiosyncratic to create surrealistic associations within the mind of the viewer? You know, was the surrealism intentional? And if it wasn't, what's your response to the surrealism that to the viewer has occurred within the book?
I think the surrealism was not intentional, but when you see the images combined, and when you flip through, then it suddenly becomes surreal. You know, like the juxtaposition, or the repetition or the order of things makes it then surreal. A single image in itself, maybe some of them are surreal, but a lot of them aren't, by the rhythm of it, and the train, and the you know, like the going through them, that makes it quite surreal. But I think another thing maybe that's also quite nice to say, because yeah, you have also Kingston, you have also a role in this, because you know, like on the back of every image there's a short sentence. Yeah. And so what I also enjoyed was more, I don't want to lick your ass or something, but it's just like that. You know, but I think the whole collaboration between between you and us. It's also quite nice, because we collaborated about the title of the book, and also with all the text that is on the back of it.
Right.
And the idea is that when you would when you would tear out all the images from the book, so you have like 120 cards, and when you would try to that's a game, so people can try to then reconstruct the order
Yes.
of the images. When you have the exact order and you turn all the images around, you actually have one quite surrealist sentence. And that was your contribution to it. And in the end, that is also nice of the process, because I think the process in making this book together with Atelier Editions and with you, it's like that was also a bit of a we didn't know where we ended up, and then that is always a good thing, if you know where you end up, it starts to get boring, and that's what funny enough, I think also with this book, it's weird because there's like a spiral bound. The spiral is way too big,
surreal,
it's a bit sloppy, and you can touch it and it bends over, and the book is a bit wobbly, and that is actually, when I think even when Thomas and I received the book, there's a nice surprise and even a little bit of uncomfortableness, and that is very nice, like when you, it's very good to be, to feel often uncomfortable also with, because I don't have that often, but sometimes the best feeling is when you have made something yourself and you see it finished, that you get really almost frightened about what you did, that you almost it shocks yourself, like, did I do this, or did we do this?
What monster is capable of such things? Exactly.
Maybe not monster, but I mean, that's the process, like when you know where you end up, it's boring, but it's good to have something that you think like, fuck, I've never seen this before, or I've never done anything like this before. And that is nice. I think that's where we do it for.
Right.
Yeah, the element of surrealism indeed comes from your words. We had a wordless exchange. You added those captions that put together make a sentence, and those sentence put together makes a text. That's where Breton and the surrealism and the cadavre exquis enter into game. And when you add on top of that, and we didn't mention that these are tear away postcards, so you can actually tear them away, and the caption actually comes on the back of the postcard, which means that when we're actually looking at a double spread like this, the words that we see next to the image don't have a direct link to it, but indeed have a link with the image on the back. So this double spread with two images which weren't supposed to be together, combined with a strange combination of colors and the text, brings maybe and create the surrealist element that you were talking about.
So to add to that, and it's my last question, is there's something obviously beautiful in this idea of surrealism. There's something also beautiful in the idea of the sort of, the Duchampian ready-made, right? That the vernacular photographs recontextualized become something very different, i.e. a chicken fillet enlarged becomes a piece of postmodern art, perhaps. But the sort of thought that kind of ties me to my last question is this idea of play. So, John Cage and Marcel Duchamp famously played this chess game whereby each of the chess moves catalyzed an abstract sound, and so in the course of playing this game together, although chess isn't like necessarily the most playful of games, they create
actually a beautiful art book made about that. Yeah, I saw that recently. It's very nice. Yeah,
it's beautiful, but what's really interesting is that with each of the chess piece moves, they're creating this very abstract composition, right? But it's through the mechanic and the element of play. And so my last question is to, what are your thoughts around the idea that play was a creation methodology here? That play was a working methodology to create this book, because it's playful. It was meant to be playful, and it feels playful. The tactility's there, the imaging exchanges are sort of, there's levity. There's the bizarre juxtapositions are fun and playful. I wondered if you could talk to play in creation as our final question.
It was very much a game, something very simple in its rules, and we played it with great joy, I believe. But there was something with this game that was very interesting to me, is that there was no way to go back. When
Right.
all the books we made, all the edits we made, there is always, to the last moment, you can say, oh, maybe this double spread is a bit weak, or maybe I don't like this image, and then I could swap it. Because of the nature of the exercise, because of the nature of the game, an image that's sent will actually create the consequence, and it's like a snowball effect. All the rest of the image actually come from this proposal. So at the end, we had 120 photos. Some of the link were better than others, but there was no way that we go back and say, okay, let's take this out and let's change this photo. And when you play that game, no matter how light and amusing it is, you know that an image sent is something that you won't be able to go back to.
Yes.
That's quite interesting, because you think twice before you play.
Yes, there's a finality in the gesture, isn't there? That once the image is sent forth, it's out of the die is cast. There is the intentionality on the part of one player, as it were, and the unpredictability of receiving the image on the part of the other. It's not similar to table tennis and so forth. But I wondered too whether, you mentioned at the very beginning of this talk that there was never any kind of competition or aggression, and that previous collaborations of this nature might have fallen off the wayside because of that. Of course.
There was once like there was once like a little because one time I think you still have that mail, Thomas. One time Thomas was responding very, in my mind, too late. So I had to kind of write a mail just saying like, I don't know what I said, like come on. Or what?
Come on.
Come on, yeah, like so sometimes I had to,
So it almost would need to have been a timed chess game, with an enormous stock.
But I think what you say, like
perfect excuse, Erik. I was in the middle of the forest and I was teaching my 8-year-old son mathematics. And I was not too much into sending you weird photos anymore. I was trying to control myself not to kill him. So that had me busy for a few days. Then I just went back. And then eventually, a couple of weeks later, I was the one who sent you a come on. But other than that, no, it was really not a fight or a competition. On the contrary, sometimes we would get stuck a little bit in themes or in topics, and there's one tiny part of the book where we get a bit stuck in the nature element, interaction with nature and flowers and things, and that's something that at some point one of us will bring a new card that completely changed the narratives and brings a little bit of oxygen, and then we can move to something else. So once again, more of a collaboration than anything else.
But I think what you said, Kingston, I think that's also very important. I think that example you gave with the chess game, that work that Cage and Duchamp did together. I think also at that time when they did that, they had no idea where they would end up with the work, And I think that nowadays that becomes more and more important because a lot of people already know where they end up when they still have to start, and that is quite a good one to just shake off all the, all the the things that you know or that you want to do, and sometimes also, sometimes a concept comes along the way by doing things, or not everything has to be thought of from the beginning. And this was in that sense also an experiment, because we didn't know where we would end up, and still we don't know. I mean, still we don't know. But I mean, you sometimes, when you make things and you make a lot of things, you constantly have to inject yourself also again with that, with some impossible thoughts, or not knowing where to go, or just because like often we are also infected by stereotypes and by stereotypical images, and you have to push those away and make a clear, like a new path to go. Yeah.
Embracing sort of playful spontaneity and unpredictability and responsiveness without necessarily superimposing too many preconceptions or rules or structures or purposes. I wanted to say, first of all, thank you very much, Thomas Sauvin, Erik Kessels. Extraordinary talk soon's available through ateliereditions.com. It's a playful, thoughtful, funny book of dialogue of images. Talk soon, friends.
Thank you, because you're part of it. You're in it as well.
I am in it.